getting it in focus. We are now not only in focus, but also properly wired up, and I hope it's all going to work. Ups and downs, which is the first title that you heard about, is to do with nuclear tones. Getting it in focus is to do with the place that the nuclear tones happen. And I think that's probably a very good place to start, because you can put the tone all over the place in an intonational phrase, but if you get the position wrong, it won't mean what you want it to mean anyway, so it doesn't really matter whether you can go up, down, or round corners. You won't sound right. So we'll begin at the beginning. And what I'm going to do is to think about some of the terminology that's involved in intonation, and to have a look at the structure of the intonational phrase, and then at the most important part of it, the nucleus. So the first thing that we need to do is to think about the phrase itself. And intonational phrases are often represented by a little diagram, like the one that you've got up there at the moment. And you can see that there is a term there, the nucleus, and the nucleus is actually at the heart of this unit called the intonational phrase. Intonational phrases are taken very much for granted, but if I wasn't using them now, you'd have a very hard time understanding me. Without intonational phrases, intonational phrases are taken very much for granted, but if I wasn't using them now, you'd have a very hard time understanding the intonational phrases. You'd go, what? And you'd be completely lost, and quite rightly so, because the whole purpose of an intonational phrase, not just in English, but in any language, is to help the listener decode the message that you want to give to them. You're in charge, you're the speaker, and in a sense, we take a duty of care to make sure that the listener understands exactly what we want to put across. And one of the ways that we do that, the first thing that we do, is to make sure we don't give them too much information at any one time. So the intonational phrase is breaking down what I want to say into what today we could call bite-sized chunks, little bits that you can process easily and understand. So there is an intonational phrase with the nucleus in the middle. The other components are in brackets, in parentheses, and I've numbered them because no matter what is or isn't present, if they are there, they are always there in exactly the same order. The nucleus in the middle, if anything follows it, there might be a tail, and if anything precedes it, there will be one or both of the prehead and head. So in any intonational phrase that you analyse, there's an absolute maximum of 4 components. And the optional slots shown here in brackets always fit around the nucleus in exactly the same order, which is why we can number them, 1, 2, 3, 4. The numbers always go that way. We never start counting 3, 4, 1, 2. You'd say, no, that's wrong. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's the same here. It's always the same order. Now, of those 4 components, the prehead, the head, the nucleus, and the tail, any combination that you like to come up with is possible. But the one thing that is always there, the obligatory component, is the nucleus itself. When we hesitate in English, when we're speaking, we might go, let's have a look at and see what we can do to illustrate this nucleus. What am I going to say next? Well, what I'm going to say is that in the intonational phrase, because that's just, yes, exactly, that's just one sound, and there's the boundary, that's it, that's the whole intonational phrase. This slot is empty, this slot is empty, this slot is empty. I haven't used them, they're optional. There's just got a nucleus. I said said It's got a prehead and a nucleus, nothing more. I only said I only said yes, you're getting that hesitation tone, that mid-level tone here. A prehead, a head, and a nucleus. I only said just now. Sorry, I only said just now. I only said just now. All 4 units are filled up this time. I have a prehead, a head, a nucleus, and a tail. I was umming and erring. I was umming and erring. That's the expression, isn't it, to and when people are not very fluent, they're going, well, you know what I mean, and that's umming and erring, okay? So, I was umming and erring. Prehead, head, nucleus, and tail. What was that word? Erring. Just a nucleus and a tail, nothing before it. Umming and erring. That's the expression. Head, nucleus, and tail. And the interesting thing here, you can see every time we get a head, there's one of these marks. This is a stress mark. So the head always starts on a stress. The nucleus also has always got a stress. There may be stresses in the bit we call the tail, but there is hardly ever a stress in a prehead. I'm not going to say it's not possible, because it is, but that's really sophisticated stuff. Generally speaking, no stresses in preheads. Erring. Umming and erring. I was erring. So whatever else is missing, the nucleus is always present. Okay? And that means, I think the shading came up, yes, that you can see the nucleus slot is always filled, even if there are gaps in the satellites around it within that system. Computer's too clever, wireless networks found, okay. Oh, go away. Right. Now, I said I was only umming and erring just now. I said I was only umming and erring just now. And at the bottom of the screens, we've got that in transcription. So I hope you can see to the bottom of the screen. I know it's a little bit difficult in this flat room to see the bottom, but I hope you can see something there. If not, you've got it in minuscule in your handout, so you can find it in your handout of the slides. All right? And you've all got a copy of the slides, haven't you? Good. So, what about some characteristics of the intonational phrase? First thing is that each phrase has its own rhythm. It has exactly its own rhythm, and syllables in the phrase, if we break it down into syllables, may be stressed or unstressed. And the stressed ones, you can see, are all marked with this little stress mark. I said I was only umming and erring just now. I said I was only umming and erring just now. So there's the stresses. The rest of them, without the mark, are unstressed syllables. I said it was. That's the prehead. And you don't even notice it really, do you? So it was only umming, erring now. So the rest of the ones, the unstressed ones, are obviously not very important for the message. What are the characteristics? Well, the unstressed syllables may have strong or weak vowels. And what that means is vowels that can carry a stress if we want them to, or vowels which never carry a stress. Any of those may occur in these unstressed syllables. I, and and I again, and then the I in the ing endings, all of those can be stressed. The rest of the vowels in this example, in the unstressed syllables, are weak ones. Schwa in was and just and and what we call the happy vowel at the end of only. Only. It's the vowel that ends at the end of the word happy. Happy. And it has a particular characteristic, and that's the name we give it. A happy vowel. More characteristics. Stressed syllables always have strong vowels, because those are the only vowels we can stress. We can't stress those weak vowels. We can only stress the strong ones. So o, ow in this one. I said I was only umming and erring just now. And the nucleus, the heart of the matter, is just one single syllable. It's always stressed, and therefore it always has a strong vowel. Now, another name for the nucleus is the tonic. We sometimes talk about the tonic syllable instead of the nucleus syllable. And that's where the term tonicity comes from. And when we're talking about where the nucleus occurs, what we're studying is tonicity. Dividing up into intonational phrases, that's called tonality. Whereabouts in each phrase we put the nucleus is tonicity. And the other lecture, the ups and downs, is looking at the third T, which is tone. So tonality, tonicity, and tone. Three systems that combine to make intonation. We're looking at the tonicity system. So, we partly answered this question, what is tonicity? Well, here's the hierarchy of all the different types of syllables that we've just talked about. And what we know so far is that syllables in the example we were dealing with could be either strong or were either strong or weak. We saw that some strong syllables carried stress, others were unstressed. And a new idea now is that there are different kinds of stress. I said I was only, I said I was only. Now that stress flies out and hits you as listeners. Because if you think about it, it's very different in pitch level from, I said it was, from the pre-head. I said it was only. So the first stress in the head is not just an ordinary everyday rhythmic beat, but it's an accent. It's a stress with pitch prominence. And the same is true of the nucleus. The nucleus has pitch prominence, erring, because it has movement. It's not just erring, but erring. And it starts some pitch movement. Okay? So some stresses are this new category called an accent. And an accent is a stress with pitch prominence. What accents do is they focus your attention. Because while I'm saying, I said I was, you could be, admiring your nail polish or scratching an itch. I mean, you could be doing all sorts of things, looking out of the window. But as soon as I get to only, your mind locks in to the utterance. So it focuses your attention. I said I was only umming and erring just now. And it's only when I get to the nucleus that I'm actually saying to you, okay, you can stop paying attention now, because that's my last accent, and that's where you can switch off. So anything that comes after the nucleus is not really very important. So it follows from that if an intonational phrase has a tail, it doesn't matter if you miss it. You won't miss anything that is salient for the message, anything that is important for the message. So that diagram then is a diagram of syllable types. It's got nothing to do with the shape of the intonational phrase, but it has to do with the types of syllables that we use when we speak, that we use when we put an intonational phrase together. Tonicity then is the study, as I said, of whereabouts in an intonational phrase the nucleus actually occurs. And that's very much the choice of the speaker, but the speaker doesn't have a free choice. The speaker is constrained by the whole environment of the dialogue. Or even me, just standing here giving a monologue, I'm constrained, and I'm constrained by what I have just said, what I've already said. And we'll see how this works as we study what happens. Remember the intonational phrase, 4 units. Now the nucleus can come right up at the end of that. I only said nothing else. No tail. That slot was empty. So it can be right at the end of the intonational phrase. Or I said I was only umming and erring just now. It's sort of in the middle there. And was what I said just now. Was what I said just now. The tail doesn't matter, does it? Yards of it. All low and what on earth is she saying? Goes quite quickly, low in pitch, nothing to help you focus, but that's what I said. You know I'm talking about the word because it was there at the beginning, you focused on it, because I gave it pitch prominence. And after that, just forget it. If you missed it, it's not important. Now the thing about that idea of a sliding scale, the fact that it can come anywhere in your intonational phrase space, doesn't alter the order of the other components. If the bits are there, they will occupy the same linear slot. But what it does affect is meaning. It makes a huge difference to meaning, whereabouts in the phrase it occurs. And it gives us an idea of linguistic markedness. Now, some of you will be students of linguistics and you will understand what markedness means. If something is marked, it is unusual. That I have come to Japan is very unusual. Now, that is a very unusual way of saying it. A more commonplace way of saying it, a more everyday way of saying it would be, it's very unusual that I've come to Japan. But if I say that I have come to Japan, it's very unusual. That is marked, linguistically marked, and stylisticians would pounce on it and say, what a strange sequence of phrases, what an odd syntax to use there. So that's what markedness is all about. And we can have markedness, we can have marked and unmarked tonicity, depending on whereabouts in the intonational phrase the nucleus occurs. And the most unmarked place for it is generally considered to be near the end. And these examples occur on the slides in your handout with these numbers. So if you're having difficulty following, you've got the printed version. So the first example would be something like, she's buying a pound of potatoes. She's buying a pound of potatoes. And you hit potatoes. It's up there near the end. But as soon as I move it to other words in that IP, in that intonational phrase, it becomes marked. It becomes what we might say more pointed, more unusual. And I think that expression, more pointed, which we do use in English, we say, you know, that was very pointed, the way you said that. It means more focused, more finely tuned. And focus, we've already used as a term in relation to accents, stresses with pitch prominence. So all of this locks together, not just kind of colloquial usage, but colloquial usage can help us understand what intonation is doing here. So compare example 1. She's buying a pound of potatoes with the other ones that we've got here. She's buying a pound of potatoes. She's buying a pound of potatoes. And she's buying a pound of potatoes. You can hear it's getting more and more focused, more and more narrowly focused. And that moves us further and further away from the unmarked form to what we would call marked, or more unusual tonicity. So the unmarked position has the nucleus towards the end. That means we've got a kind of broad picture. We listen to all of the intonational phrase. And that keeps your attention right up until I've finished. So if I had a question like, what's Janet doing? She's buying a pound of potatoes. You keep listening to my answer until I get to that very last lexical item, the noun potatoes. And what's happening here is I'm helping you along by saying, until I get there, this is all new information, it's what you wanted to know, so you have to listen. None of that is shared. If you'd known that that was what she was doing, you wouldn't have asked me the question in the first place. So we have no common ground here. I know and you don't. So I can tell you. Okay? So that gives us terms like given information, old information. So anything that's given is something that's old, something that we already know, and new information. If we have end focus, then, if we have broad focus, it means I can't leave anything out. I've got to tell you the whole story. Nothing can be dispensed with. So, here's a different answer. One of the ones we looked at. She's buying a pound of potatoes. Now, what's Janet doing? That question won't do anymore. She's buying a pound of potatoes. Pound of potatoes. Remember what we said about tails, things following the nucleus? They don't matter. So if potatoes doesn't matter, it means that you and I both know we're talking about potatoes. What you don't know now is how many. How many potatoes is she buying? So that must have been the question. She's buying a pound of potatoes. All of that's down in the tail. I don't even need to say it. She's buying a pound. I don't have to even repeat the words. We can simply wipe them out of the script. They are not important. The focus is now fair and square on the quantity. Answers was, no, she's buying a pound of potatoes. So the question this time, is she peeling a pound of potatoes? No, she's buying a pound of potatoes. You know, how silly can you be? So she's buying them. I can leave out the quantity and the vegetable. She's buying. She's buying a pound of potatoes. I can put it in if I want to, but if I put it in, you'll probably miss it. She's buying. You know, very hard to grasp what's in a tail. And native speakers have the same problem. It's not just you as non-native speakers of English who have problems with tails. Native speakers have exactly the same problem. If I'm doing a dictation with my students and they're supposed to be writing down the sounds that I say, if I have marked tonicity, they make lots of mistakes in the tail because it's hard to grasp. So again, what that's showing us is that the common knowledge is changing. What we share, what we know about, is changing. We now know about the quantity and the vegetable. What we didn't know was the action. Now, how do we do it? Well, there's various different ways, and I suppose you could call these rules. I always hesitate when I put up the term rule here, because in a sense, if we did it by rule, we would have huge volumes of rules. I don't know whether you know the Encyclopedia Britannica, but it's got about 1 million volumes. It's massive. You go and see it in a library, the hard copy. It's vast. Well, we'd need, you know, something like that for the rules. I don't think that's how we do it. So rule is a bit of just a kind of catch-all. It's just a useful way of saying this seems to be one of the things that triggers the position of the nucleus. So first thing then, we might be pragmatic about it. We rely on pragmatics. So we have an example here. What are you doing at the weekend? You're going on a day trip to London. Now, what's happening here is that in my reply, all of it is important. You've asked me what I'm doing at the weekend. You clearly haven't got a clue what I'm doing. I mean, I might be staying in bed or just doing the washing. Could be all sorts of things. But no, we're going on a day trip to London. So going on a day trip and the place I'm going to are obviously all new information. Even the pronoun might be new, because as you know, you in English is ambiguous. It could be singular, it could be plural. So when you say to me, what are you doing at the weekend? Are you addressing just me, or do you mean me and my husband, me and my family? We don't know. That question's a bit ambiguous. And I answer, we're going on a day trip to London. I'm answering on behalf of not just myself, but more of us. So that could be new as well. You might not have known. So I think here we can say that the location of the nucleus is chosen pragmatically. I determine exactly how much information I want to give you and how much information I want you to pick up out of what I'm saying. Intonation is very manipulative. I'm very much in control here. It's quite powerful stuff. Oh, more pragmatics. Now, when all the information is new, then, as we've said, the nucleus falls on the last content word. Content word, lexical item, we're talking about things like nouns, main verbs, adjectives. So the last one of those in the group, in the intonational phrase. Are you looking forward to the journey? And the answer comes back, well, I don't like journeys with such an early start. True, we had one of those this morning. We managed. Now, what you can see here is that the noun in the end position, the end position time adverbial, sorry, early start, is the last bit of new information. So even though we've got sort of talking about the journey now, we've refocused, completely new stuff, and I'm repeating a bit of that, you've still got to keep concentrating until I get to the end. I haven't hit the nucleus, so everything is still in focus. Okay? So you're concentrating right up until the very last moment in order to get my new information. However, if that last content word is repeated, that's when everything starts to move. So somebody comes in halfway through our conversation and says, sorry, what's all this about early starts? And a couple of us standing there, I say, I don't like early starts. And another person might say, I don't like them. So we're now focusing on preferences. See what I mean? So early starts is given, it's shared. This person's come in, they've heard that we're talking about time, pick that up. So I don't refocus on it. English never refocuses on things. It just doesn't work. If I asked you a question, okay, who wants to make an early start? I could say, if I'm in the audience, I want to make an early start. I want to make an early start. But I could say, me, I do. I don't need to repeat any of those words. So all of that is shared information again. So I can narrow my focus down. I have marked tonicity in order to get my message across. My nucleus moves forward onto something that is new. And in so doing, it may make the group a lot smaller, a lot shorter. I don't have to repeat all those words. I can simply abbreviate them. And I can even do this ungrammatical me that we do in answer to questions like this in English. Grammatical rules were made to be broken, so we do it all the time. So what we've got then is more focus, more strong focus in our responses here, and we can eliminate all those redundant words, and that helps a lot. It means, especially you as a non-native speaker, you don't have to stumble over them. If you get the nucleus right, you can leave them out. And you're still going to give a completely bona fide, respectable response. I think that's really important, because if you look at lots of learning materials and lots of books that we teach students from, we ask them to repeat all sorts of stuff that a native speaker in the normal course of events, would never bother to articulate. Now, that's not practice, because you're not actually practicing real language. So we do need to think how this game is played. It's like a game of ping pong, isn't it? And, you know, where the ball hits on one side of the net determines on where it goes when it's hit back to the other side of the net. So we've got to keep all of that very much in mind. Anything that we already know goes in a tail or is left out completely. All of those responses then to take you back to that terminology: early focus, narrow focus, something that's near to the beginning of the intonational phrase instead of right up at the end. Now, so much for pragmatics. Semantics also comes into play here because, as I said to you a few moments ago, English speakers never kind of repeat themselves. They never focus on the same thing twice. I mean, they will if you haven't understood. They're quite generous, quite kind. But in the normal run of events, we never focus on the same thing twice. Let's put a little dialogue here. I see Sarah's driving a new sports car. End focus. Everything's new. But then, another speaker comes in. What make of sports car? Well, sports car is now shared information. We know we're talking about a sports car. So make is the new item. So what happens is the nucleus shifts gradually back, first of all, to make. I don't actually know the names of makes of sports cars. I don't actually know the names of makes of sports cars. So it's now moved back to names. So all of that, I didn't even need to say it. But it was a red car. Finally, something that I understand. You know, Lamborghinis and Jaguars and all the rest of it, beyond my ken. But a colour of a sports car, I could do that. This was a red one. Okay? And there she is. There's Sarah in her new red sports car. Little pedal car. Some languages do repeat themselves in terms of focus, and Spanish does, for example. And you can see, even if you don't know Spanish, that this is going to be about a bottle of water. Agua, por favor. Con gas o sin gas? Sin gas. Fine, okay. Translated, it's hilarious. Water, please. Fizzy or not fizzy? Not fizzy. I'm lost as an English speaker. We just don't do it that way. There will be some repetition because I've got to pick one of two alternatives, but I just don't keep harping on the same stressed syllable. So my version, as a native speaker, would have to be water, please. Fizzy or not fizzy? So positive or negative. So I focus now on the negative. And I choose not fizzy for my answer. That's all right. That's not a repetition. That's telling you which one of two things I want to have. Now that's okay. Nobody would laugh. But this one, water please. Fizzy or not fizzy? Not fizzy. That is weird. That is just weird. And if you say that sort of thing in a class of native speaking students, they split their sides. Do you know that expression? To split your sides? It means you laugh so much that you start to get a pain in your side. And that's called splitting your sides. Okay? So that's what happens if you do that kind of thing in a class of native speakers. They just think it's hilarious because it is so not English to repeat yourself in that way. So moving the nucleus about is here is controlled by semantics, it's controlled by meaning. Never repeat the same meaning twice. And that goes for synonyms as well. So for example, if I say, are you cycling to work this morning? The answer comes back, yes, I enjoy going by bike. I enjoy cycling. So the synonym, cycle, or to go by bike, is now out of focus because it's so closely related to the nucleus in the first question. I usually travel by tube. Goodness, I hate. And I could just say, I hate it. And you get the message. I hate the thing that you're talking about, even if you don't hear what I said. I still haven't met the new girl in reception. So the focus is the new girl in reception, a big noun phrase with the nucleus on the head of that phrase, reception. Oh, I already know Mary. So what that tells us is that the new girl in reception and Mary are the same person. That's shared information. So down it goes into the tail. Somebody else says, oh, I already know little troublemaker. So we now know that Mary is a nuisance as well. But this is shared information. It goes down into the tail. It's closely related to the new girl in reception. It is effectively a synonym in discourse terms here. Won't be remotely like a synonym if you look it up in the dictionary, but again, we're thinking here about interaction and discourse. Okay? So all of that out of focus in the tail. So if you've got a synonym, don't refocus on it. To de-accent that, it becomes old information. Now the semantic thing gets a little bit complicated. If you've got a word which has a broader meaning, we're talking about the type, that includes a previously used word, a token, they're regarded as synonyms. So, for example, you take the word dog, that's a very broad term, and then you talk specifically about a poodle, an Alsatian, that's included in dog, all right? So let's see how that works. Smoothies. You know about fruit smoothies and things, don't you? People drink a lot of those these days. So the question is, what about raspberry and mango? I like most sorts of fruit smoothies. Okay, so we have here a very broad term, fruit smoothie, but here I'm looking specifically at one flavour, one variety. So I've gone from a specific thing to a much broader, more general thing. If the thing is broader, more general, and includes the specific thing, again, it goes out of focus. What should we give her? Roses. I think she likes all flowers. Roses are flowers. Flowers include daffodils, roses, bluebells, buttercups, anything you can think of. And so I don't focus on it because it's too general. Do you like ravioli? I eat just about any pasta. And again, you're going from the specific to the general. Now that's quite interesting because the other way round, completely the opposite occurs. Would you like a fruit smoothie? Yes, I'll have raspberry and mango, thank you. Now I'm going from the general in my question to the specific in my answer. I'm making sure that you don't bring me a banana and coconut one, because I don't want that. I want raspberry and mango, so I focus on the specific here. Should we give her a bunch of flowers? Yes, let's get roses. Gone from the general to the specific again. Let's have pasta. I like ravioli. Not spaghetti, not anything else, but ravioli. Okay, so I've gone from the general category of pasta to the specific variety, ravioli. And you can see here now I maintain end focus because I'm focusing on something which is new. And I'm basically saying, I don't just want any old fruit smoothie, I don't just want any old flowers, I don't just want any old pasta, I want a specific variety of each. And that's what my nucleus is doing, making sure the listener understands that. So, I maintain this broad or end focus. In compound nouns, that the nucleus, frying pan, blue, tape recorder, goes on the first component. But that first component might actually be operating in an adjectival function. I might have a noun phrase. And if it's a noun phrase, then the nucleus is going to go on the second component. Let's see how this works. In that first example, I recognise that song. It's a blackbird. Now, a blackbird is a specific variety of bird, and it sings in a specific way. And people who recognise bird song recognise a blackbird when they hear it. But those two components, those two items, the colour term black and the term bird, the noun, okay, could be combined in exactly the same order, not in a compound noun, but in a noun phrase. So I saw a black bird. I saw a black bird, and somebody might say to me, well, what sort of black bird? Well, I don't know. It's like not knowing the names of makes of sports cars, isn't it? I haven't a clue what sort of bird it was. It could have been a crow, it could have been a black bird, it could have been anything. I don't know what it was. But I saw a black bird. It's definitely black. They grow exotic plants in their greenhouse. Greenhouse, most of you will know, is not green at all. It's made of glass. And it keeps the temperature nice and high so that your exotic plants will grow. Pete lives in that greenhouse over there. And here we've got exactly the same thing, a compound noun. The nucleus turns up on the first element of the compound. But in a noun phrase, adjective plus noun, a green house, a blue house, a red house, it comes on the head of the noun phrase, on the second component in that collocation. And this is the one that we dreamt up a couple of days ago. I'm very proud of this. It's not in any textbooks. It came out of a genuine conversation. That's real live language data. Put the casserole on the hot plate. Now, a hot plate, as you will know, is an electronic device for cooking food. Food keeps warmer served on a hot plate. That is a pottery device for serving up food. So we have a difference again between a compound noun, a hot plate, and a noun phrase, a hot plate. And we tell those apart by the position of the nucleus. Tonicity here locks into grammar to keep these types of utterances separate. These phrases become clearer. So in each case, first example is the compound noun, and the second the noun phrase. But as I say, that's not in your handout. You can find all about compound nouns and noun phrases in textbooks. I'm just quite proud of that example. Now, back to the handout. Grammar and tonicity, again, work together in different types of utterance. Affirmations, positive things, and denials, negative things. In affirmations, the nucleus generally goes on the auxiliary verb. So if somebody says, oh, Jonathan can't play that tune, somebody else who knows better might say, he can play it, he can play it, or he can, I can play it out. It's exactly the same story again. I don't need to repeat these words because we already know we're talking about musical ability here. Kyoka doesn't speak any Polish. She does speak some Polish. She does, And again, I've gone for the auxiliary verb to make this affirmative statement. And you can see this time that I don't have to say those words in brackets at all. I can simply leave them out. Exactly the same story as all the other things that we've looked at, where the nucleus has started to move back further in the intonational phrase, nearer to the beginning. Denials, the other side of this coin, we tend to focus now on the negative particle, on not. And that will also be true in what we call contracted forms. So things like don't, won't, shan't, couldn't. That becomes like a phonetic word. And that is the thing that's communicating the negativity, and that is the position where we will put the nucleus. So, Mum can play the trumpet. She can't. She can't play the trumpet. I think you're going to be late. I'm not going to be late. I'm not. We focus here. You can see a contracted form. She can't, but it's got the negative in it. And here, I'm not, the negative particle itself. So again, any of the shared information, any of the stuff that's just going to be repeated gratuitously, you can leave it out. And you can probably see, any of you here who are teachers, how this stuff in brackets is just so redundant. That if you want to promote fluency in English speech among your students, there's absolutely no virtue in practicing saying things that don't need to be said. What you want to do is you want them to come back instantly with I'm not going to be late. You know, you don't need to say that. I'm not, with the nucleus on the negative particle, is perfect. And they don't need any more. And we're all guilty of this, because we all kind of go by the book. And I think perhaps we need to rewrite the story here a little bit and start getting into the 21st century. This is all kind of old school stuff. It's like, you know, my grandmother would have said that if I hadn't put all the full stops in and everything, I wasn't speaking properly. It wasn't nice. But people don't talk like that anymore. Language moves on. Language is very much alive, and we've got to keep up with it. Vocatives and appositives. Now, a vocative is when you talk to somebody by name. Hello, Saki, I might say to Professor Taniguchi. And so that we have example 24. Have you met the new student, Saki? Now, we know there, if we're native speakers of English, that I'm speaking to someone called Masaki. Have you met the new student, Masaki? Because Masaki's in the tail. So we know that it can't be important. And the reason it's not important is because I know he's called Masaki, and believe it or not, he knows he's called Masaki as well, so it's shared information. So when we know each other's names, that's common knowledge. So it is relegated to the tail. And I don't need to say it. I can say, have you met the new student? Simply because I'm looking at him, he knows I'm talking to him. But as we know, occasionally we pop the person's name in. It's kind of a friendly, colloquial thing to do. Can you help me, Alex? I think this guy at the bottom of the hole is really in need of assistance here. And he is clearly talking to somebody called Alex? Because Alex is in the tail. All right? Can you help me? Can you help me, Alex? Specifically asking Alex to get him out of this jam. In an appositive construction, however, the nucleus actually goes on the appositive. So, have you met the new student, Masaki? Who am I talking to now? We haven't got a clue, have we? The reason for that is because the appositive takes the nucleus. And an appositive is something that makes a double reference. We've already mentioned the new student. We're now giving a bit more information about the new student. Can you help me, Alex? We don't know who I'm asking for help. We just know that my name is Alex. And so appositives will always have a nucleus, and they may even, as in, can you help me, Alex? They may even have their own intonational phrase. And if you think about a room full, say, of students sitting around tables doing something, and the teacher's behind their back, and somebody wants some help, says, oh, can you help me? And he or she, they know that the teacher hasn't seen them, so they pop their name in, Patricia. And so when the teacher turns around, he or she knows exactly who's spoken. Okay? So a double reference to the same thing, the second reference will always have a nucleus. And especially if it's a pronoun, as in example 27, the pronoun will have one as well. You don't even have to use proper names. It can be sort of two functions. Ask the maintenance officer, the very tall chap. Two references to the same person. Now, empty categories. This is a funny idea. Some words, and we've talked, haven't we, about content words, lexical items, these kind of big, important words, nouns, verbs, adjectives, what have you, that take a nucleus. But sometimes you get words that look like lexical items, but they behave like grammatical items, like pronouns, articles, conjunctions, little words that simply glue things together in a grammatical form. So grammatical items are the determiners, the pronouns, the conjunctions, and they are normally unstressed. And that's why, those of you who know phonetics will know, they have weak forms. There's no point my talking about the book I wrote the other day. I would say, the book I wrote the other day, and I get over the articles and what have you very quickly. Lexical items, though, like book, the other day, I'm going to dwell on. So they had stresses. The bicycle. The hasn't got a stress, the bicycle has. Now, empty categories are words that have both a lexical and a non-specific function, and they're words like one, place, business, thing. And what we do with these is if they're a lexical item, we focus on them. It's the number 1. So that's got a numerical value. That's a lexical item. But I want one. I want one. I'm not telling you how many I want. I'm just telling you that whatever it is, I want one of it. I want one. So it's become non-specific here. It's become an empty category. Put it in its place. Place is there specific, and we know that perhaps there's a shelf with labels underneath, and there is a place for the tape recorder or the frying pan or whatever it is. Put it in its place. Don't leave it lying around. But if I want you to come and visit me, I say, come round to my place. Come round to my place. And I'm not being very specific. I'm just saying come to wherever I live. I'm not telling you whether I live in Buckingham Palace, or a high-rise apartment, a tent, or a cardboard box. I'm not telling you where I live. I'm just saying come and visit me at that address. So place here has become an empty category. He's opened a business. Now we know we're referring to some particular, I don't know, office company, business company, some sort of shop, whatever it might be, a business this person has engaged in. It's a terrible business. It was a terrible business. I'm talking about. I could be talking about, I don't know, the earthquake in China. I could be talking about the floods in Burma. I could be talking about all sorts of things. It's terrible. She's having an affair. Wow. So that means she's going out with somebody she shouldn't be going out with. But if I say, yeah, it was an expensive affair, that doesn't mean it cost her a lot of money to go out with this chap. That's saying whatever it was, like for example, maybe I threw a party and it cost me a small fortune. Somebody might say, oh, I see you had a party the other night. I might say, yes, it was an expensive affair. It implies I sort of wish I hadn't done it, but I'm not specifically saying party. So affair there becomes an empty category. It's quite the thing. And that's a colloquial term meaning, you know, something that's in fashion. But another thing. I'm not saying another what. It might be another idea. It might be another particular point on a list of points. Thing has now become an empty category. So there are lots of words that have this kind of duality. And you have to know how it's being used. And this kind of stuff is the sort of stuff that's best learnt by ear. It's not something that you easily get out of dictionaries. You need to remember them. Like when you learn a new word in English and you learn its stress pattern. You learn that as part of learning the word. I mean, supposing you learnt the word hypochondriac. You don't learn hypochondriac and then you want to say it. You learn hypochondriac, and you learn the stress pattern as part of learning the word. And I think all of these sorts of things are best learned in phrases as kind of active communication. So you learn them as part of a package, and then you get the focus in the right place. A little bit more grammar. I know some people like grammar, some people don't, so I'll be brief. But long grammatical subjects. Now, what in heaven's name are they? Whatever they are, they almost always have their own intonational phrase and a nucleus as a consequence of that. So I might say, that distinguished-looking chap in the corner comes from Japan, pointing to Masaki again. And that distinguished-looking chap in the corner is a long grammatical subject, because what follows it is the verb. Whoops, where's my arrow gone? Is the verb, and then the rest of the sentence. Okay, so comes is the verb. So all of this, that distinguished-looking chap in the corner, is the subject. And that's what we mean by a long grammatical subject. If you've got one of those, they almost invariably have their own intonational phrase and attract a nucleus. And it helps the listener to unpick what I'm saying, because there's a lot of information there. Sometimes, even short grammatical subjects can do this. I might just pick a name. Masanori comes from Japan. So subjects can have nuclei, they can have their own intonational phrases. Often they don't. I mean, I might say Masanori comes from Japan. And I've just got one phrase there with the focus on Japan. But if I want to be a bit stylish, and if I want to make life easier still for the listener, I can break after the subject, and the whole predicate goes into its own intonational phrase. Another sort of subject that always attracts a nucleus is one of these things that we call fully lexicalized noun phrase subjects. A very grand term there. And what it means is a noun, or a noun phrase, like the phone, or the cat, or the ambassador. So it's a big term for a very innocent thing, a very small thing. Okay? The phone's ringing. The cat's been sick. The ambassador's been shot. Now, if I replace that fully lexicalized noun phrase subject with a pronoun, that's not going to attract a nucleus. It's ringing. She's been sick. She's been shot. Goes back to end focus. It goes back to exactly where you would expect it on the main verb. But in these strange event sentences with this, you know, subject, fully lexicalized, a noun phrase, for some reason they attract it. We don't know why, we just know that they do it. And again, that's one of the things that people have to pick up kind of colloquially. They have to learn the phrase, learn the tune as part of learning the phrase. In much the same way as if you were learning Chinese, you learn the tone as part of the word. Here you just learn a little bit more, a phrase which has a particular tune and a particular focus. And relative clauses. Now, a defining relative clause will always attract a nucleus, and as a consequence of that, it will have its own intonational phrase. So my cousin who lives in Cardiff works at the airport. Now what that does is defines precisely which cousin I'm talking about. I may have a cousin in Hong Kong and a cousin in Cardiff and a cousin down the road, and I'm telling you which one I'm talking about. If it was non-defining, I would simply say my cousin, who lives in Cardiff, works at the airport. Now, all that does is like it puts some brackets in between my cousin works at the airport and tells you something a bit interesting about her. I could leave it out. My cousin works at the airport. My cousin who lives in Cardiff works at the airport. What that's doing is that first intonational phrase is identifying the grammatical subject, the extent of the grammatical subject. First one is quite long because you need all that information in order to know precisely which cousin. The second one, it's very short because I've only got one cousin. So the fact that I tell you this person lives in Cardiff, it's just a snippet of information. My cousin who lives in Cardiff and drives a tractor and wears Wellington boots and has pink hair works at the airport. So I've tossed in lots of other ridiculous bits of information about my cousin. But I've still only got the one cousin, and the one cousin has its own intonational phrase. It is the subject of the sentence. So intonation helps us with defining and non-defining relative clauses, and a native speaker would tune into that and know automatically how many cousins I've got. Have I got one or more than one? And time adverbials. They're coming to dinner on Sunday. I'm flying to London tomorrow. That's a lie. I'm not flying to London tomorrow. I'm flying to London tomorrow. I emailed my daughter last night. Now, those time adverbials, as you can see in those examples, are all in the tail. They're coming to dinner on Sunday. I'm flying to London tomorrow. I emailed my daughter last night. So Sunday and tomorrow and last night are time adverbials. If I put the nucleus on it, they're coming to dinner on Sunday. Strangely, what that tells us is that the coming to dinner business is something that we share. As soon as you put the nucleus on an end position time adverbial, it makes it contrastive. And this is again something that you need to learn as a fact of life. It's very difficult to get it out of the book. You have to learn it as part of the phrase, if you like. But the unmarked version doesn't have a nucleus. Coming to dinner on Sunday, not on Saturday. I'm flying to London tomorrow, not next week. I emailed my daughter last night, not yesterday morning. As soon as the time adverbial has got the nucleus, it becomes contrastive, it becomes marked tonicity. even though it's at the end, even though it's in that thing that we began by saying is the unmarked position. So, we've covered a huge amount of ground. We've looked at accents, we've talked about content words and grammatical words, empty categories, focus, intonational phrase, new and old information. All of it has centered around this concept of the nucleus. And the nucleus locks into syllable types and stress. And I've tried to summarize a few of the English speakers' habits, if you like. Now, it's not really much use to you if you can't do it. And you have a worksheet. So even though it is 8:05 on a Saturday night, we're going to do some work. And this is the point at which probably everybody's thinking, I wish I hadn't come after all. I actually got to do some work. So you've got a text here, which is a little conversation between a couple of people, one of whom seems to have been shopping. And if you're confronted with a text like this and you've got to, say, read it aloud, what do you do? How can you make it sound fluent, sound English? And one of the first things, obviously, is to get the nucleus in the right place. And what we generally advise people to do at home, in my classes, is to begin by getting rid of all the punctuation. Sometimes punctuation helps you, but often it doesn't. And so we say strip all the punctuation and instead replace punctuation marks with intonational phrase boundaries. Now, I know that in many places people leave the punctuation marks as well and add the intonational phrase boundaries afterwards. That's fine, but we do need to get the boundaries in there, and they won't always correspond with punctuation marks. So my students take all the punctuation out, and so that first sentence turns into something like this. I tend to keep the capital letters on proper names because sometimes proper names are such that people get a bit confused about whether it's a proper name or whether it's something else. So we have a question here. And what we want to know is, what's the rhythm? Which syllables are stressed? Because remember, we need to identify the stresses in order to determine which one is the nucleus. So if I was saying this as a native speaker of English, I might say something like, can I put this bag on the table, Val? And you can hear those 4 beats. Can I put this bag on the table, Val? Can't you? And I could mark that up then as having 4 stresses. There are the stress marks. Now, which one of those stresses was the nucleus? And you can do that by rule, if you remember one of the things that I said to you. Who's brave enough to hazard a guess? Shall I say it again? See if you can spot it. Can I put this bag on the table, Val? Can I put this bag on the table, Val? Well, I could change it, couldn't I? Can I put this bag on the table, Masaki? Can I put this bag on the table, Fred? It doesn't matter what I put on the end, because I am talking to Val. Now, if I'm talking to Val, it must be a vocative. Vocatives don't have the nucleus, they go in the tail, don't they? Because we all know what our names are. It's shared information. So, what is the last content word if it's not Val? Go on, you must know the answer to this. Can I put this bag on the table, Val? Are all those stresses equal? Can I put this bag on the table, Val? Well, Masaki, I think you'll have to lock us in at 20 past 8 because we're still going to be here in the morning at this rate. Go on, where is it? Which one of those stresses is the nucleus? Can I put this bag on the table, Val? Which one jumps out and hits you? Say it. Be brave. Table. Yes, that's right. It's the stress on table. So the stress symbol on table is our nucleus. You're absolutely right. And how we show that, you see, you don't actually have to be nervous because you do know the answers. You just don't want to say them in front of all these people. We decide which stress is the nucleus and we underline it. So there is a big step forward in marking up the intonation of this sentence. Can I put this bag on the table, Val? And we need to look at the next bit then. Certainly, Peter, move the books out of the way. You've been shopping. So we've got 3 intonational phrases here. Let's take the first one. How many stresses do you think it might have? First intonational phrase, the words certainly and Peter. If you were going to say it, what sort of rhythm would it get? Certainly, Peter. Certainly, Peter. Probably got 2, hasn't it? Certainly, Peter. Probably got 2 stresses. Yeah? And which one of those stresses, look, the next step, which one of those stresses is the nucleus? Is it the stress on certainly or is it the stress on Peter? You've got a 50-50 chance of being right, even if you gamble. So the odds are, you know, even. Who's brave enough to say which one they think? Certainly. Absolutely, yeah. Because Peter is a vocative again, isn't it? What we now know is that Val and Peter are having a conversation. Vocatives go in the tail, so certainly, Peter. Certainly. I don't even have to say Peter. Certainly. Yeah, so certainly, Peter. So the first syllable of certainly is going to be the nucleus. Move the books out of the way. Move the books out of the way. Move the books out of the way. Think 2 stresses, don't you? Move the books out of the way. Yeah? Happy with 2 stresses? You could have move the books out of the way. But that starts to get a bit laborious, doesn't it? Move the books out of the way. That sounds more natural. It sounds more colloquial. 2 stresses. Which one's the nucleus this time? Move the books out of the way. So which one is the nucleus? Move the books out of the way. Is it books or is it way? Books, isn't it? Yeah, because out of the way. I could just say move the books. Move the books, couldn't I? Out of the way is just a gratuitous bit tagged on the end. So I think you're absolutely right. It's books. So far, you've got a sort of 100% score, haven't you? The people who've dared to answer have been right. We've got a question. What about the rhythm in this question? Yes, that gentleman 3 rows back, you said it, didn't you? Have you been shopping? I was watching your map. Have you been shopping? Have you been shopping? I'm very good at lip reading, so if you try things out, provided you're near enough, I'll spot it. So, have you been shopping? It's got 2 stresses. Have you been shopping? Have you been shopping? Which one is the nucleus? Have you been shopping? Yes, it's the shop syllable of shopping, isn't it? It was somebody, was it you that said that? Yes, absolutely right. So we're doing extremely well here. Got a very high score. So if you do this stuff as a team, the sky's the limit. You're going to get 4 marks. So have you been shopping? And shopping is the nucleus. Next bit. Well, There's obviously a couple of intonational phrases here, aren't there? If we take the punctuation out and put in the intonational phrase boundaries, which is what these vertical lines are, you can see that they've kind of replaced punctuation, can't you? And notice there was a comma, but there's nothing. That's what I said, it doesn't always correspond. Peter just goes into the tail, so there's no boundary there. But yes, that's easy. One syllable in an intonational phrase has to be stressed and the nucleus, so that kind of takes care of itself. You don't need to lose sleep over a little intonational phrase like that. But then we get an interesting expression. Yes, I've been in and out of shops all day. I've been in and out of shops all day. How many stresses? I've been in and out of shops all day. How many stresses? You think there are 4? Listen to how I'm saying it. I've been in and out of shops all day. 3, yeah, I make it 3. I've been in and out of shops all day. Okay? Because if I could say, I've been in and out of shops all day. But it gives it a completely different rhythm and takes longer, doesn't it? So, I've been in and out of shops all day. So I've got 3 stresses. Been in and out of shops all day. Which one's the nucleus? Been in and out of shops all day. What do we reckon for the nucleus? Which one do you go for the nucleus, do you think? Been in and out of shops all day.
In and out of shops all day.
Yes, that's very good rhythm. Which one do you fancy for the nucleus, though? Which one are you going to underline? Day, yes, absolutely. So day is going to be the nucleus. Well done. In and out of shops all day. Excellent, we're getting some really good feedback here. Now then, next bit, another question. We strip the punctuation. It's one intonational phrase. Did you buy anything nice? Did you buy anything nice? How many stresses have I got this time? Again, listen carefully to my rhythm. Did you buy anything nice? What about some people at the back? You showed me 3 hands. Did you buy anything nice? Did you buy anything nice? And you can always clap the rhythm as well. Did you buy anything nice? And it's as if you're doing poetry or something, isn't it? Because we've all had to do that kind of stuff at school. So, did you buy anything nice?
Did you buy anything nice? No.
Did you buy anything nice?
Did you buy anything nice?
Yeah, which one is going to be the nucleus? Did you buy anything nice?
Did you buy anything nice?
Nice is the nucleus. Yes, nice. Nice. Did you buy anything nice? So we're going to underline that. Did you buy anything? And you see, it makes sense because all of this is new. I want to know now what you bought when you were shopping. All of this was new. I've not only been shopping, but I've been doing it all day. Here's the question that introduced shopping in the first place. That's all new. This was a little bit odd because that's one of those funny adverbials. It's not a time adverbial, but lots of end position adverbials behave this way, and we don't give them a nucleus, so that's an exception. But yeah, it's following exactly the kinds of rules that we identified when we looked at the examples in the lecture. Ooh, this is a big long one, look. I wonder how many intonational phrases. This is one of the ones where the punctuation helps a little bit because we can strip it and we can replace it with different sorts of boundaries. Obviously, I've still got more to say. So I haven't got one of these kind of major I've finished boundaries, these big double ones here. Did you buy anything nice? That's clearly the end of my term. But here, I've got some new shoes. I've got some new shoes, and I'm going to go on. But let's think, how many stresses in? I've got some new shoes. New shoes. How many stresses? 1, 2, 3, 2. Yes. I've got some new shoes, so I've got 2 stresses. New shoes. It's a noun phrase, so where does the nucleus come? Some new shoes. Yes, there's a lot of people sort of going shh. I can hear shh sort of coming back to me. So I think we ascertained that it's on shoes. New shoes. That's like our blackbird, hot plate, new shoes, isn't it? It's a noun phrase. That's the next thing in my list, and you can see again I haven't finished because I've got a minor boundary here, just one line. T-shirt. A t-shirt. That sort of takes care of itself. You might want to have another stress on shirt if you're not sure about the word, but I think a t-shirt. A t-shirt. So it comes at the beginning of that noun. And then shorts. Shorts. That takes care of itself like yes did, because there's nothing to choose from, so that does it for you. And another noun phrase, joined with and a Nike jumper. And a Nike jumper. A Nike jumper. I think we've probably got 2 stresses. Where's the nucleus? On jumper, yes, thank you very much. So it's on the jump part of jumper. The Nike jumper. Now, we've just mentioned jumper. That's the last thing we said. So the person we're talking to is going to remember that. It's going to be shared information. So in this question that comes next, the most likely intonation will not put the nucleus on jumper, because that's repeating yourself. So the most likely solution colours the jumper. Colours the jumper. Where's the nucleus? We've got 2 stresses. What colours the jumper? Which one's the nucleus? Colour, yeah. What colours the jumper? What colours the jumper? Because the jumper's the last thing I mentioned. The answer. I wouldn't say blue, I think. I'd say blue, I think, wouldn't I? So I think, again, the punctuation helps us a little bit there with the intonational phrase boundaries. Blue is the nucleus, I think. We tend to not go for pronouns in English. Shock, horror, the person can't see colours properly. Blue? That's green. Yeah. Oh. That's going to have one by itself, so that's going to be a nucleus. And what colour are my shorts then? What colour are my shorts then? I can get away with just 2 stresses even here. And what colour are my shorts then? And which one is the nucleus? Shorts, yes, because I've now changed the topic from the colour of my jumper to the colour of my shorts. So I get the contrast by making that nucleus. And the answer is, I call the shorts purple. I call the shorts purple. How many stresses? I call the shorts purple. Yeah, that's perfect imitation. How many stresses are we doing? I call the shorts purple. 1, 2, 3. It's not a lot to count. You can still do it on the fingers of one hand. I call the shorts purple. So what's the new information? Purple, that's right, it's the colour purple. So, that I think, is the way to approach these things, and then worry a little bit about the tone that you put on the nucleus. You need to know where to put the tone before you can worry about the tone itself. So this is a very important first step. And you can always step back a little bit and do this first when you're confronted with a reading text or a, wanting to say something, make a speech, give a presentation. You'll be well on the way to being fully understood by your audience. So, a final word. Thank you. The nucleus on that. Okay, thank you very, very much.